If you go on like FEMA's website, it says right on there, every household should have, 3 days of food and water if something happens, natural disaster or what have you, until they have time to, to get to you with aid. What happens if they can't get to you with aid, though? And if they're telling you at least 3 days, that should key everybody into, hey, we should be a little bit self-sufficient. So I think it's very important that we're prepared enough to take care of ourselves when things don't work the way we're normally used to. Ice storms that come in, catastrophic winds like we just had and rain. What happens if we can't get to the stores? Do you have enough food to sustain yourself for multiple days? Do you have enough water? At Christmas when we had the pipes burst, we were fortunate we got the water back running pretty quick, thanks to a friend of ours. But, we didn't have any water in the house for a little bit. No plumber was answering the phone calls. Called about a dozen people. We only went about a day without water, but how do you flush your toilets? Do you have water to drink? And, so having water, we were fortunate, I keep 5-gallon jugs of water and, we have cases of water that we drink in that, but, a lot of people don't have that. And so if you don't have these things that we're normally used to having, how do we sustain, even if it's just for a short period of time? So I think, everybody needs to, and I'm not saying that you got to be completely self-sufficient and go off grid, and that if you want to do that, that's great, yep. And I'm all for it. But, do you have a little bit of extra food? Can you sustain you and your family, for 3 days a week, 2 weeks? Water, same thing. Do you got extra stuff for personal hygiene? Blankets, sleeping bags, things if we don't have heat? Do you have heaters or their generators? Do you have to rely on the grocery store all the time, or do you have a freezer that, you've went in with some friends and got, part of a cow or a hog or something like that? And I said, you don't have to get crazy on it, but understand that things do happen and we can't just call and somebody materialize with food, water, medical aid with EMS. The fire department doesn't just show up right away, and being somewhat self-sufficient so we can sustain for at least a limited period of time without anybody's help.
Yeah. When it comes to preparedness, do you focus at all on being able to travel, go somewhere, if you need to go somewhere?
So like if something happens, being able to like bug out, if you will.
Yep.
No, not necessarily. Not for me personally. It's great in the books and in shows and things like that. But I'd rather be at home.
Okay.
Or if I'm out somewhere, how do I have enough stuff so I can get back home to where all my other stuff is?
Okay, sure.
And so, having the ability if we're out somewhere and there's a natural disaster or something and I can't drive, or even if I can drive, do I have enough stuff in my vehicle to sustain me for the amount of time it takes to get back home where all my stuff is? Because that's kind of our home base. That's that homestead where we've got all these extra things.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious if you would think about that differently if you lived in the city closer to like where we are, because I have not taken a lot of steps to prepare to like go somewhere, but my natural instinct is like being in the city like this. I guess I'm thinking in terms of less now natural disaster and more of like something has really gone wrong. Like maybe there's been an invasion of some kind or
nuclear.
An uprising, including nuclear. Sure.
Yeah. End of the world that we know it type of stuff.
Exactly. Growing up in the country on 15 acres, I would have thought more about like staying there.
Sure.
But living here in Nashville on 1 acre, I just feel like that instinct down deep, which is, I should probably also be prepared to go somewhere.
Sure.
Go 2 hours out of Nashville to a friend's 100 acres or something like that. Like I think about that and I wonder if that's because of being in the city, whereas you're more in the country. And so, that's about as good a scenario as you're going to get. If you have everything there, you'd want to stay there.
Sure.
Do you think that would be the case?
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. The first thing that I would say, driving in here and looking is, what type of community do you have here? What I mean by that is, do you get along with your neighbors? Are they kind of the same mindset? Are there people that you can rely on and you can pool things together? We're relatively close to the city, but we've got this good community here and we can work together and help sustain. If not, or maybe in addition, because like I said, if we have our primary plan, we always got to have a backup plan, an alternate plan, an emergency plan, contingencies and all that. If leaving or bugging out, falls into part of that plan, do you have somewhere to go? Mm-hmm. And then if you do, how are you going to get there? Because I have a lot of people, that are students that have become friends, and, we talk about these exact same scenarios. They either live down here in Nashville or somewhere in the surrounding areas in subdivisions and that. And they're like, well, something bad happens, I'm coming to your house.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we go over this all the time. She's like, stop inviting people over. Cause
that's why you don't tell them what you've got.
Right.
Exactly.
But, having that plan in place that if, something is happening, number one, to be able to anticipate where it's going by, wherever you get your information from, whether it's news sources, which depending on which news outlets you watch, it's their narrative. But you get information, you might be able to just drive, just take our house, for example. If, you were going to come to our house, which is an hour and 20 minutes away, you see all this is going on, you call me up like, I don't know. Well, jump in your car, let's go now, and get there. But having that plan and know where we're going, and then how are we going to get there? Because then also, you have to think about, for you've got the whole family. Mm-hmm. How are we going to get all them there? Because you might be able to, grab a pack, if you will, and trek across, which would be, an hour or 2 hour drive, but might be a couple days if we're, walking, be able to take a backpack and do that. But will the kids be able to do that? How do we wrangle the kids and do that? And so I guess, it really comes down to planning. And then notice when I said earlier, have a willingness, do whatever it takes to protect yourself, protect the people you care about, and be a better member of your community. I think that community comes into play here. And it might be just around the people that, or the people that are around you here, that may be your community, but maybe you have an extended community. Like say you got a friend with 100 acres, have you sat and talked about with them, hey, if things really go bad, which, if you watch the news and see what's going on, the end of the world could happen tomorrow.
Yeah. It's not a stretch. I mean, it's not quite the stretch it felt like it was at one point.
Sure. But if it does, have we talked about this and like, hey, if these indicators are met, this is the time where, hey, we're all going to go to this place, and we're going to start enacting that plan of bugging out or whatever moniker you want to put on it to get there. But planning is a huge thing with it, and everybody's a little bit different.
Yep. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I think also having kids, being in the city, again, if it's a natural disaster, then it's all good. You're here. And if I happen to have a home generator, then it's all good. But if there's like some sort of an unrest or something along those lines, like an invasion or whatever, I don't think I want to be the only house in the neighborhood that the lights are lit up on. You know what I mean? Like that
Very
seems like
point.
A little bit of a drawing attention.
Sure.
And so I don't think it would be that helpful because it feels like you're kind of painting a huge target on your back.
Yep. Nope. I completely agree. And that would fall into then, if say you did decide to stay here, for at least a certain period of time, certain thresholds haven't been met yet where it's like, okay, we got to go. You're right. Staying low profile, low key, and I think this is an overused term nowadays, but being the gray man, and not letting people know, what you have is an important thing.
Is that what that means? The gray man?
Well, it's used in a variety of different things. It's blending in, not standing
Sure.
out,
Gotcha.
things like that.
That makes sense.
In this particular instance, if you have a home generator, if you have, chickens and a garden and these things, do we want other people to know? Because if they don't have any of that stuff and there's civil unrest, they're like, well, I can just go over here and get it from them, and that could cause us all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So, living low key and under the radar until those certain thresholds are met where we're going to go somewhere else, if that's part of our plan, I think is important, and not kind of showing our cards to everybody at the table.
We used to build storage sheds and cabins, and this was probably 2013, 12, 2011, 2010-ish. There was like an upsurge of popularity with the whole prepper movement.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, that's 12, 13 years ago now, a lot of people viewed that as sort of fringe and
Sure.
kind of people being a little bit extreme. And some of them bought some of our stuff to put on acreage to have it. And they would outfit it with like booby traps and stuff around the thing, and have lots of food and water. And it was fascinating to me. I remember watching some of their YouTube videos and kind of being fascinated by it, but it did seem more fringe, and it's fascinating now because it seems a lot less fringe.
Yep.
It's like, oh, okay, I see what they were doing now.
Sure.
There's a real utility to that, or there can be.
Yep.
There really can be.
I think so. And again, it's not being paranoid, it's just being prepared. And, one of the things that I think is important is that community, whatever that is. Like I said, it can be a circle of friends. But if something does happen, worst case scenario, like you're talking, civil unrest, EMP from, a nuclear detonation, the grid goes down from a solar flare, whatever the case may be, where things get really bad, we can't do it on our own. No matter how many preps you have, no matter how prepared you are, you can have this garage full of food and water and guns and all that. You still can't do it all on your own. You need other people. You need a community of like-minded people. And then how do we become self-sufficient? Because, if it is an extended thing, again, we can only have so much food. So just, say, for example, you got a year of 25-year shelf life freeze-dried or dehydrated food. Well, if it goes past a year, what are you going to do past that?
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Someone's efforts on their own can really only get them so far.